This is Gala Avary reporting to you about this week at the Video Archive Cinema Club, the 20-seat secret cinema located within the Vista. Today, I am joined on the airwaves by Video Archive Cinema Club manager Matt Landsman to chat about the calendar for the week of Monday, February 3rd. Hey, Matt.
Hi, Gala. January is finally over.
Yes, and we are into February, and I personally have seen the full calendar for February, and I think it's a great lineup. But we are going to wait to discuss the overall theme of the month of February until next week once the calendar has been released to the public. So let's just get right on into the movies this week. On Tuesday, the 4th, we have a 2 p.m. matinee of The Sting. So I'm just going to start us off with this one because I am really excited that we're showing it this month. I'm really glad to say that we're kind of introducing some movies that were meant to be on Video Archive's podcast, but never made it to the mic. And if you listen to Video Archives, you may know the story behind The Sting, where when we did the episode for The Great Waldo Pepper, we originally were supposed to pair it with The Sting. Quentin, Roger, and myself actually went to go see the double feature on film at the New Beverly, and it was such a great time. But when we got around to recording it, the guys just felt like they wanted to cover The Great Waldo Pepper on its own, so we never ended up talking about The Sting. But we are officially inducting it into the Video Archives canon here at the Cinema Club.
That's right. And I'm really excited that Gala has shared with me some of the movies that she's watched for the show that didn't quite make it on the show, because it means that they are Video Archives approved titles and that they're titles that you know that Quentin enjoys as well. And if you like following along with the podcast, they might make a good home double feature for you.
Yeah, exactly. And also, some of these movies are either ones that we meant to record but never got around to it. And some of them were the ones that we watch after recording because we always get together and we'll usually watch an extra movie or two. And it's really fun just to include it. So, I'm really excited. We're starting this off with Tuesday the 4th, The Sting. Matt, have you seen The Sting? I'm guessing yes.
I have seen The Sting. And let me tell you, the way I have two personal stories with this movie. I was first introduced to this movie by way of The Entertainer, which is the song by Scott Joplin. It's the classic ragtime song from the early 1900s. It's the theme song of The Sting. When I was a little kid in Virginia, a bit of backstory here, I was sort of forced into piano lessons, which I ended up enjoying. And one of the first songs I learned how to tickle the ivories with was The Sting, or not The Sting, The Entertainer. And I became aware that it was, I thought, from a movie called The Sting. When I was a little kid, like a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, whenever I started playing the piano, I discovered this movie and attempted to watch it, and it was far too dense for me because I just wanted to hear the song that I would like dance around the house to and play on the piano. Then, moving on, much, much later in my life, I'm in college, and my screenwriting professor in college at Chapman ends up being David S. Ward, who wrote the screenplay of this film. And I ended up having to get critiqued on my own scripts by this incredible, successful screenwriter who told us a lot of the stories about making this film. And he was such a classy guy. And the writing process of this film was he basically wrote it on spec. He was just reading about like real life pickpockets, and it took him like over a year to write the script. And then after he wrote it, it was just like done, dead in the water. Like no one was reading it, nothing was being made with it. And then over a year later, after he spent a year writing the script, someone found it and did coverage of it and called it the greatest American screenplay ever written. And of course, it ends up getting made by George Roy Hill, who did Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, also with Newman and Robert Redford. And David S. Ward has done a lot of amazing other movies as well, like Major League and Cannery Row. And he also wrote what my mom's supposed favorite movie is, at least the last time I asked her, Sleepless in Seattle.
Oh,
So,
that's such a great movie.
yeah,
That's like a chick flick, like woman most beloved movie for sure.
well, maybe someday she can watch that in a theater with me. But I've actually never even seen that movie.
Oh, that's a great one to check out. And we're showing this on VHS, right?
Yes, an original Video Archives VHS, perhaps the one that maybe Quentin watched back when it was at the video store, or back when you guys were thinking about covering it.
I actually, because this was meant to be on the show, I do have a copy of The Sting. I have an MCA video cassette. And I'm just going to go ahead and read the back of the box because the one thing about this movie is that there are so many twists and turns. It is so well written that if I'm going to talk about it from a personal like desire of like when I watched it and how I felt, I fear that I'm going to give something away because this movie is kind of best to go in knowing as little as possible. And I think this MCA video box back does a pretty good job. Winner of 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, The Sting is one of the most popular and critically acclaimed films of all time. Set in the 1930s, this deftly made comedy suspense deals with an ambitious small time crook, played by Robert Redford, and a veteran con man, played by Paul Newman, who seek revenge on the vicious crime lord, played by Robert Shaw, who murdered one of their brotherhood. How this group of charlatans puts, quote, the sting on their enemy makes for the greatest caper in movie history, complete with an amazing surprise finish. Directed by George Roy Hill and written by David S. Ward. That's enough to be said. Honestly, I wouldn't want anyone to give me any more away than that.
I'm going to use the phrase when you go see The Sting, the con is on. I love saying the con is on. It sounds like you're just off to commit some awesome heist. And con man, by the way, means confidence man.
Yeah, you're a confidence man. So I'm really excited for this one. I think it's going to play great at a matinee showtime. And I just think the audience, whether you've seen it, you're going to see something new the second time you watch it. And if you've never seen it before, your mind might be blown like mine was in the theater.
Yeah, it's one of those all-time great movies that won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Editing, Best Screenplay, and it's like one of those things you have to see at some point in your life. So I've seen it now twice in my life, but once when I was too young to understand it, and I'm eager to see it now with a deeper understanding of film history.
That takes us to Wednesday, the 5th matinee at 2 p.m. We are showing a movie called Clearcut.
It's funny because in the Patreon a little while back, I remember seeing a couple people like talking about this movie, and I was kind of laughing to myself, thinking like they got no idea that I'm already planning to show this at some point, because this is a really great movie that I first discovered through the amazing Severin Films box set, All the Haunts BRs, which is the compendium of folk horror that they put out a couple years ago. And we've been slowly sort of working our way through that box set, which kickstarted my interest in folk horror, I would say, and with showing Eyes of Fire and showing Allison's Birthday, and now showing Clearcut. And there's actually another title on the calendar this month that is from the second edition of that box set, which I don't even have yet, and I didn't even know it was in that box set because it was under a different title. But it's a movie that I'm very, 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 very excited about. This is sort of what you might call, or Video Archives might call, a revenge-o-matic. And this deals with the concept of clear cutting or clear felling, which is sort of a forestry logging practice in which all or most of the trees in an area are cut down. And this indigenous group of people get a lawyer to represent them because their area has been clear cut for logging, basically. And Graham Greene, I'm sure you've seen Graham Greene and stuff, Gala. He is sort of a very iconic Native American actor. He was in Dances with Wolves. He was in The Green Mile. He was in Wind River. Even today, he's in Tulsa King. He's in the show Reservation Dogs, which I haven't seen. He's just in a ton of stuff. And if you look at him, or look at his picture on the tape box, you'll be like, oh yeah, that guy.
Well, most importantly, he's in the Twilight Saga New Moon.
I will admit I have not seen that one. So stay tuned for someday maybe a 16 millimeter print of Twilight at the
Twilight.
Video Archive Cinema Club.
Wouldn't that be the day?
Twilight Part 3 or whatever that is. But I know the new Bev's done marathons of that. But yes, Graham Greene is an amazing Native American actor. He plays a guy named Arthur in this movie who is basically taking violent revenge against this logging company. And he is dragging this lawyer around with him, this activist lawyer who's passionate about protecting the Native American rights. And the lawyer is like calling his own ethics into question after losing a case in which his client now, Arthur Graham Greene, is taking matters into his own hands. And what he's doing is torturing people, murdering people. It kind of turns into a horror, sort of like survival sort of epic, that's mostly set around a lake and around the woods. So if you like folk horror and you like those sort of like backwoodsy, like Deliverance style movies, I think you would really like this one. And Graham Greene called it his favorite role he ever played, and he considers the character to be sort of like a trickster spirit. So it's definitely an underseen gem. I think it really fits the vibe of video archives very well. And I mean, gosh, you really just root for him to kill these people that are tearing down his home and that are tearing down all the trees.
Whenever I see a revenge-o-matic, I always ask exactly what are they taking revenge against? And most typically in a revenge-o-matic, they're taking revenge against either someone they know has been murdered or they have been sexually assaulted. But in this case, it's kind of like the earth has been assaulted. And because of his ties to the earth, he's taking revenge for someone who has no voice. He's taking revenge for Mother Earth. And it's just kind of badass.
It's
It's awesome.
it's super awesome, and it's not. It was funny because I was in a box set of like folk horror. I was like, is this horror? Is this really up my alley? And it totally was, and it totally was something that I really resonated with, like thematically. So I can't tell you the last time this is screened in a public setting. I don't know if there's like 35 prints of it floating around. So if you're hoping to check out Clearcut in a theatrical setting, definitely check this one out.
You know what, Matt? Before we get on into the evening shows, I think it's time for us to take our snack break.
Well, I am hungry for a snack.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
And we are back from our snack break, and I think we have a special snack to share.
I got to finally catch up with one of my favorite people who works at the Vista slash Video Archives slash Pam's Coffee, and that is Nava, who is the assistant manager of Pam's Coffee. She is always there with a smile on her face. She's always there to say hi to me and talk to me about what's going on in the world of Pam's. And she told me that her favorite things on the menu are the coffee cake and the lavender vanilla handcrafted latte. But she also said she likes what she calls a filthy chai, which has 6 shots of espresso in it.
6?
Yeah, that's like,
Oh my
even
God,
for me, that's a lot.
that'll keep you going all day. If you're looking for bang for your buck, there it is, a dirty chai. I think a coffee cake is probably the best thing to like eat with coffee. And even though I don't think a coffee cake actually has any coffee in it, the name is very deceptive.
They
But
kind of
oh,
just
it's
taste like
so
cinnamon.
delicious. Oh yeah, it's like a cinnamon cake. It's so delicious.
They're so
And
good. And I think Natalie makes them too.
yeah, Natalie is like Chef Natalie.
Yeah.
She's anytime you go to Pam's, there's like that delicious baked goods case, and I like to get the that chocolate vegan cake because I can't eat eggs. So that chocolate cake, it's so good. But if you are able to like eat eggs and dairy and gluten, ask if there's anything in the cabinet that Natalie herself has made because I guarantee you it's going to be delicious.
Yep, and she is awesome. Natalie is Chef Nat on Instagram. You can probably find her through Pam's Instagram. But yeah, we love the work that is doing, and they're always kind of keeping me energized with not 6 shots of espresso, but a good amount of black iced coffee.
But they could
As
be. You
I'm,
could have 6 shots of espresso in in your dirty chai if you wanted.
I think I could handle it.
I think you could handle it. And that brings us to our first evening show of the week. We have a Video Archives podcast double feature on Thursday the 6th at 7:30 p.m. We are showing American Commandos with co-hit Delirium. If you remember, and you are an OG Cinema Club podcast listener, Matt and I actually teased American Commandos appearing as a vaulted episode. And I am so excited that that vaulted episode came out. It's number 202.5. You can find it over on patreon.com/video archives. But American Commandos is directed by Bobby A. Suarez, and it stars Chris Mitchum, John Philip Law, and my personal favorite, Franco Guerrero. And this is a title that we watched. Actually, it's funny. We watched this like on film originally, just like after recording, and then we just could not stop talking about it. So finally we watched it again on tape. We brought it to the mic. I think I supplied like 3 tapes to the collection just so that we all had one. We really, really loved this movie. And Matt, I know you loved it too when you first saw it.
I loved this movie so much. I believe my tape of it now resides with you, and my tape of it now, which is a Lightning video tape, came from our friend Mark Hoyk. And this movie just blew me away when I first watched it. And you know what's funny, Gala? The reason I first saw this movie was because it was originally planned to play in one of the first couple months of the Video Archive Cinema Club, all the way back as far as over a year ago.
And that makes perfect
And
sense because it was in the zeitgeist, which is exactly what Quentin uses the Cinema Club for.
it's definitely, I would say, official podcast canon at this point, and it doesn't make any bones about the fact that this is a post-Rambo sort of Rambo knockoff, but it does everything you would want it to do. And I think both the Thursday and Friday double features do an interesting thing where they exist in the wake of these seismic genre movies that shook up their respective subgenres. And this still happens to this day, where like a really popular movie will come out and then other movies like that will come out. And this is sort of the post Rambo movie, and the next movies we're going to be talking about are sort of the post Conan the Barbarian movies. But I've seen a lot of Rambo knockoffs, and there are none that are this good, with this team of guys getting together and doing every bit of destructive violence you could hope for. They're building a truck. I think it was your dad who mentioned at one point it kind of like reminded him of like Sorcerer almost in that
Yeah, when
way.
they build the
Uh,
truck with all the
the
hot
sound
ladies, like the hot like dance hall girls and prostitutes are the ones building the truck. It's awesome.
The music is really good in this too. And of course we love Franco Guerrero and Bobby A. Suarez. This movie pairs really well with The One-Armed Executioner, which we showed at the Cinema Club back in November. And it's I would love to show more movies in this vein, like LA Wars and Cocaine Wars and Deadly Prey and stuff like that. I just think this movie fits in awesome with everything we've been showing at the Cinema Club. It's one that we have literally been trying to get on the calendar since day one, and it is such an awesome movie. And it says on the back of the box, when you want fast action and ultimate revenge, get American Commandos, Rage for Justice, which just sells it so well.
And again, if you want to hear Quentin, Roger, and myself discuss American Commandos, you can do so on episode 202.5 over at patreon.com/video archives. Now, for the second in this double billing, we have Delirium, directed by Peter Maris. Now, this movie was featured all the way back in season 1, episode 2. Back when we were trying to figure out our format, if you guys I've talked about this a little bit, but in our very, very first episode, we actually recorded 4 movies, and 2 of them turned into Video Vault episodes. And then for our second episode, we were like, okay, we'll do the 2 movies, but like here's our like little sweet treat at the end. Here's this little like, what is this? We're going to investigate this movie that no one's ever heard of that is just kind of wild. And that is definitely what Delirium is. The back of the box, and I have a Paragon Video Productions box, and Quentin has 2 versions of this in the collection. One is a Paragon, which I gifted him, and the other, I can't recall exactly what the brand is, but we'll share pictures of that eventually, and you'll be able to see it at the screening. But This this Paragon video box on the back, it is just a very, very short blurb to get you the flavor of the movie. They shall have murder wherever they go. Charlie kills women indiscriminately and grotesquely, and Charlie is going to go on killing. The police have no real clue to his identity, but the behavior of one contact leads them to widen their investigations. The law closes in, and violence explodes in a terrifying twist of stunning fury and suspense. Matt, I think you did a really, really, really great job pairing together these two movies for the double feature because they're both like Vietnam revenge, crazy killer movies.
Yeah, this is definitely like the week of revenge. It's kind of funny to think that there is a vengeance theme across many of the
Well, like
movies for this first week of
The
February.
Sting has a vengeance. Clearcut has vengeance. American Commandos definitely has vengeance. Delirium has vengeance. I
The Barbarians has an element of vengeance as well.
and I wonder if Double Trouble and The Invisible Man do, but we're gonna get into that in a little bit. But great job on this double feature. This is a really fun one.
Thanks. I really wanted to give a bit of podcast Vietnam synchronicity.
So again, if you want to hear Quentin and Roger and myself discuss Delirium, directed by Peter Maris, head on over to the Video Archives podcast. This one's featured on our main feed for free, so you can go ahead and listen. This is episode 2 of season 1. Okay, guys, and that leads us into our Friday show on the 7th at 7:30 p.m. We have a double feature of The Barbarians and Double Trouble.
This is one that I am so excited about. I would say that this is perhaps an all-timer for me, and it is probably it's either my first or second favorite double feature on the calendar for the entire month.
Wow.
Gala, I have to ask, are you familiar with the Barbarian Brothers?
I don't think I am, actually, but they look very familiar.
So they are basically these two ultra bodybuilder guys. Their diet was said to be 36 eggs a day, amino acid capsules, and chocolate milk. And their names were Peter Paul and David Paul. And in the wake of Arnold's raging success in the 80s, they were sort of put up to be these movie stars. And first, they were just in, I think, Knight Rider and a couple of TV shows and stuff like that. And then they were found by the great producer Menahem Golan and signed a deal with Canon Pictures to do multiple films. And the main film that they are known for is the 1987 movie The Barbarians, which I have wanted to screen forever. As long as I've had any ability to do screenings, I've wanted to show this movie because this movie is amazing. I have to tell you about this movie. Okay, so you think you are watching a Conan the Barbarian sword and sandal knockoff that has now it's two guys instead of one. Like you think that is the deal. It's you're gonna watch a Conan movie with two Conans. And the beginning of the movie, these two brothers are enslaved, and they're literally moving this like kind of rotating structure the same way that Conan the Barbarian does when he's enslaved in the John Milius classic. And there's this epic chase scene, this caravan chase in the first act of the movie, and it's all just like great barbarian stuff. I love that subgenre. I don't know if you or the listeners knew that about me, but outside of like horror and sci-fi, I really love the like sword and sandal, sword and sorcery like subgenres, like the fantasy type genres, and it's just checking all those boxes. And then the guys grow up. They're still enslaved. Now they look like these squat sort of he-men guys. And then maybe 30 minutes into the movie, they escape from slavery and escape from captivity from their masters and the evil villain that owns this kingdom. And then something amazing happens. And these guys talk. And you realize they are not in the same movie as everyone else in this movie. Everyone in this movie is acting like, thee thou hast, like old speak, sword and sorcery language. And these guys are like New Jersey meatballs. They are not acting at all. And a big part of the joke in this movie is that they just aren't even attempting to seem like they're of the period or like serious Conan the Barbarian type characters. As soon as they open their mouths, it is instantly hilarious. Laugh out loud, so funny. And the guy, the first scene in which they talk, the guy's like strung up, like they're gonna be hung in the woods or something, and he literally flexes the muscles in his throat in such
Oh
a
my
way that he
gosh.
frees himself from hanging, and he's making these absurd like crowing noises. I like these like throat sounds. I can't even begin to replicate it, but these guys are so funny. So it's like a great barbarian movie, a Conan-esque movie. You're along for the ride, and then these guys show you who they are and how they're sort of incapable of acting almost, and or they're just doing this very intentionally. I'm not sure which it is, and it just becomes funnier and funnier, and they go on this epic adventure to defeat an evil wizard who's played by Richard Lynch, who's a great villainous actor of that time. We've seen him in a lot of stuff like The Sword and the Sorcerer, Puppet Master 3. You'd like him, Gala, because he was in The Next Generation. He was in an episode called Gambit.
Oh, yeah, 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 for sure.
And he probably played a bad guy in that too, Arctis Baron.
Yeah.
But there's a very like low budget looking dragon in the third act of this movie
Oh, I
where it kind
also
of feels
like
like
that. I
it
also.
kind of feels like they just ran out of money at a certain point making this movie. Ava LaRue plays the girl in this movie, and she's very, very charming. And they're both after this girl. And there's a scene where they kind of stumble into like a harem of sorts and just start like, let's say, having a field day. And
This sounds
it's just
awesome. This sounds
this
awesome.
you would love this movie. I think this movie is going to play really well. The Barbarian Brothers are just so much fun. And I have to mention that the director of this movie is Ruggero
Oh,
Deodato,
of course.
who we know from Cannibal Holocaust and House on the Edge of the Park, which are two of the sickest movies I've ever seen in my life. Like literally two of the most like hateful, depraved like exploitation movies. And then he makes this, which is kind of delightful and definitely not for children, but at the same time just like a pretty joyous movie. So I can't recommend this enough. You will have such a good time watching this.
So, just speaking of Rogero Diodato, I watched this movie with Quentin recently called Live Like a Cop, Die Like a Man, which is an amazing title. And it is basically an elite special squad movie of these two guys that are cops. And I just have to give this movie a shout out because it was one that we considered covering for the podcast, but we ended up not. But it was just so much fun. So, if anyone wants more Diodato after they come and see the Barbarians, come and check this one out.
And then if you love it enough, you got to stay for Double Trouble from 1992, which is another movie with the Barbarian brothers. And in this one of them plays a criminal, and he's like trying to use this like piece of a circuit board to steal diamonds from the National Exchange, and the other one is a cop. And they are both brothers in the movie, but they're on opposite ends of the playing field. But they team up to defeat this evil crime boss who's trying to steal both pieces of this key. And who is that crime boss? It's Roddy
Oh
McDowall,
my
who
gosh.
we love from Planet of the Apes and so many great things. I mean, I'm going to read the back of the box. Double the action and double the laughs with David and Peter Paul, the Barbarian brothers, the most mismatched pair of identical twins since Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger. David is a Los Angeles detective. Peter is a convicted cat burglar. The muscle-bound brothers must become unlikely partners when Peter is granted immunity to help his brother bust an international jewel smuggling ring. Um, I just think this is super fun. These guys are so fun to watch together. Unfortunately, I know at least one of them has passed away in recent years, but I have been a fan of these guys for a long time, and I know it's like one of those if you know it, you're a fan of it type things. So, uh, definitely, I would say that that's my pick of the week.
Also, Matt, have you ever heard of these guys called the Trend Twins?
I have not. Is that the Da Vinci
No, no,
guys?
no. I love the Da Vinci guys, but these are the Trend Twins are Michael and Christian Guerra, who are these like two guys, I think from the Bronx, who you'll have to look them up after we record, but they sound like these Barbarian brothers, like a modern day version. I think they're on this like supplement steroid. I think it's a steroid called Tren, And they are like these squat buff guys that make videos. And yeah, I totally watch bodybuilding content. I love it's like a subgenre I like to watch. I like competitive eating and I like bodybuilding. So it kind of sounds like a modern day Barbarian Brothers. You could almost
Uh,
remake the Barbarians with the Trend Twins.
you will have to send me that because I am always interested at like, even if I can't achieve it, just like peak physical physique is always just so interesting. And these guys, like I said, achieved it by way of like a crazy diet. Also, you know who else is in the Barbarians? I have to give a shout out to is Michael Berryman, who is a very distinct actor that we love from the Hills Have Eyes and a lot of other horror movies. And his character name is the Dirt Master.
Dirt Master, I like that.
Yeah, I'll also, while we're just on this tangent of recommending muscle-bound content, I have recently become obsessed with something called Carnival Rio, which is a hour-long 80s video in which Arnold Schwarzenegger goes to Rio, Brazil, and parties with the natives. And it exists on YouTube, and now thanks to Frankie Latina, I actually have a VHS of it. This is amazing. This is not something we can show in the theater, but I highly recommend you tracking it down. This is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. If you like bodybuilders and you love
I
Schwarzenegger.
do. I like both of those things. And so this double feature, Friday the 7th, 7:30, sounds exactly up my alley. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun, really fun with an audience, and just a really good lighthearted time. Now,
Yeah, it'll be a feel good experience.
that's
If we did a different Diodato double feature, it would not be a feel good
so it's like a feel
experience.
good Diodato rather than a feel
Yeah.
bad Diodato. Now for our final show of the week on Saturday the 8th, we have The Invisible Man, directed by James Whale. We're kind of continuing our classic monsters series that we've been doing with this title.
Jules McLean and I are always trying to get more Universal monsters into the calendar. We absolutely love all of those characters. I truly believe that they are like the periodic table of elements for horror movies, and we've been trying to fill in the gaps. And we've shown The Invisible Agent, and recently we showed The Wolfman and the Mummy, and even last week we showed The Kiss Before the Mirror, which is another James Whale title. James Whale is one of our favorite recurring directors at Video Archive Cinema Club. He, of course, did The Man in the Iron Mask, which is one of Quentin's, I would say, probably favorite movies, period, from what I have discerned. And he, of course, did Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein and a movie we showed back in November called Remember Last Night. So this. It was about time that we showed the original Claude Rains Invisible Man. And to celebrate that, this is a 16 millimeter
Oh,
print,
that's so
which
exciting to have a 16 millimeter showing. Those are the shows that always sell out.
they do always sell out, and it's been a while since we've had one. I believe it's been maybe since November since we've had a 16 print in the rotation. So it's really exciting to see these Universal monsters with that flicker, kind of hearing the projector, like experiencing them in a new way with a new level of clarity that you've never seen them before. And this is one of the great ones. I mean, James Whale is a great director. Claude Rains is terrific in this, the original Invisible Man. This is, of course, adapted by the H.G. Wells story. Whale didn't want to do it. He was trying to not keep making horror movies. Originally, they were going to do it with not him and not Rains, and Karloff was going to do it. And somehow the circles turned where Carl Laemmle, who was the producer of these films, got Will to do the movie again and got Claude Rains in the movie. And he plays Jack Griffin, who's the Invisible Man. And like I said, he is so good. He is diabolical. He is cackling. He is funny. I actually think this is one of the funnier Universal Monsters movies. And it takes a lot of, I would say, bravery for an actor, a starring actor of this era, to not show their face until the last scene of a movie. You literally do not see Claude Rains' face in this movie until the end, which is like pretty wild, even by today's standards. He shows up in a bar, like they just there's a this guy trudges into this kind of like snow covered like inn or this tavern, and people realize that he is the Invisible Man. His face is wrapped in bandages, and the special effects in this movie or amazing, even by today's standards. And we just love Claude Rains. We love him in The Adventures of Robin Hood, Casablanca, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I will say his version of the Phantom of the Opera from 1943 is not my preferred version. I'm definitely a bigger fan of the Lon Chaney version, but terrific actor, and what a way to experience this classic on 16.
Again, the 16 shows are always the ones that sell out. It is such a unique experience to be in the cinema club and actually hear the projector turning and the film moving and being with everyone just as the emotions swell. So, as soon as these tickets are available for purchase, if you're interested in coming to the Saturday the 8th show of The Invisible Man, I would snag your ticket ASAP. But if it somehow sells out before you have a chance, don't worry. There is always a standby line, and Matt does his best to get every single person that's in that standby line in the theater.
I will always do my best to get people in. We want as many people to experience these movies that are interested in them as possible. And as we're recording this, we just had an incredibly successful show of Coven and Modus Operandi, which was super well attended. Like we said on last week's episode, we had to open up a second showtime of Coven and Modus Operandi because it just was so popular, and people loved really watching those movies in that space. So come on down and usher in February with us.
That is this week at the Video Archive Cinema Club. Matt and I will see you all next week for even more exciting titles. Remember, patrons get this episode one day early for free over at patreon.com/videoarchives. Plus, we do have a weekly newsletter that comes out on Mondays with pictures of all the boxes and any memorabilia. And also, we were able to share Mark Borchardz's introduction to Coven and Modus Operandi, which was really special. He did a pre-recorded introduction, so we were able to share that over on the Patreon. When a director does an in-person introduction, that remains for the audience. So those are not shared, but since we had a pre-recorded one, we were able to share it, which was super special. If you'd like to get your tickets to any of the shows that Matt and I just talked about, you can do so at
VistaTheaterHollywood.com.
And as always, follow the Cinema Club on Instagram at
Video Archives Club
for updates on show times and formats. Okay, well, Matt and I will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
This calendar episode was produced by the Video Archives podcast and hosted by Gala, Avary, and Matt Landsman. Find even more of Video Archives on our Patreon, patreon.com/videoarchives. Copyright 2025, all rights reserved.